When I created my channel, I knew it would not be an anime-only YouTube channel. I knew I wanted to make all sorts of reviews, so after 2 videos I was ready to make my first single movie review. And so I chose a classic. One of the original horror movies, and definitely one of the most famous horror movies ever. Tobe Hooper's 1974 classic, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I thought this would be a really good idea for my first non-anime centric video. If you've seen this movie, you'll likely have one of 2 thoughts. Either you thought it was a cheesy slasher with bad characters and bad writing, or you thought it was a classic horror movie that is short and can make you jump. And I respect both sides of the argument on what they think, but I'm definitely on the side of, yeah, this is a classic and one of the best horror movies I've ever seen. When I first watched it in 2021, I believe in October, my Letterboxd diary only goes back to Halloween 2021, I immediately loved it. It's only 1 hour and 23 minutes. If I go and click on a random movie on Letterboxd and look at the length, Scream 2022, just under 3 hours. Encanto, the new Disney film, is only 1 hour and 40 minutes. It's very rare to see a film this short. So I thought to myself, is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre underrated? Well, I rewatched it on January 25th this year, and this is my review of the classic. The movie opens on August 18th, 1973. A camera's light brightens up the room with the classic sound effect. We see a dead body that has been turned into a piece of art, and the radio tells us that a lot of grave robbings have been happening recently, and also that there's a gas shortage. We meet our main characters, Sally and Franklin, who are brother and sister, Pam and Kirk, who are dating, and Jerry, who is Sally's boyfriend. Franklin is also a paraplegic. The van stops so Franklin can pee and he accidentally rolls down the hill. He dies on impact. No, of course he doesn't. That would be a cool beginning though. The day is absolutely boiling and Pam isn't making it more bearable as she talks about zodiac signs. The van stops at a little cemetery to ask if Pam and Franklin's granddad's grave had been robbed. As they go to check, an old man is telling Franklin that he has seen some stuff that they don't tell you about. He seems probably drunk. After confirming that their granddad's grave had not been robbed, they go back onto the road. They drive past the slaughterhouse as Franklin talks about how they kill the animals, which is pretty unpleasant for vegan or vegetarian Pam. They see a hitchhiker and decide to pick him up. The hitchhiker has blood on his face and is acting pretty weird. He shows the group a picture of the slaughtered cow that he had taken. He also talks to Franklin about head cheese, also known as brawn.
You'd probably like it if you didn't know what was in it.
The hitchhiker grabs Franklin's knife out of his hand and cuts a huge cut down his own hand and just laughs at it. As the group look on shocked, the hitchhiker just gives Franklin his knife back. The hitchhiker gets out his camera and takes a picture of Franklin before demanding that Franklin pays him. After Franklin refuses, the hitchhiker burns the picture and cuts Franklin's hand with a knife before jumping out of the van and covering the side with his own blood. They stop at a gas station to get some gas, but they are also out. The owner of the station offers them some barbecue and he seems like quite a nice cook. He also recommends they stay around for a while. The group gets some barbecue and leaves to go to the old Franklin place. They arrive at the place, basically destroyed, and Franklin just stares at the blood on the van as he cleans it. Franklin gets stuck downstairs as, well, you know, how is he supposed to climb the stairs? Pam and Kirk come down and ask Franklin the directions to the swimming hole he had previously mentioned. He gives them directions and they say they'll be back in an hour or so. After finding no swimming hole, just grass and a dip, Kirk hears a generator. Him and Pam make their way over to the house, finding loads of cars under a steel blanket on their way. Probably the past victims. Kirk goes up the stairs to knock on the door. He wants to buy some gasoline and negotiate for it. Pam had gone and sat down away from the door. He keeps knocking, but eventually the door just opens. He keeps calling, but gets no answer. He eventually enters and hears a pig squeal. Then, this happens. There it is. The one, the only Leatherface. Pam goes to check on Kirk, and in one of the most famous shots, she makes her way to the house. She calls out for Kirk and eventually enters the house calling for her boyfriend. She enters a room finding animal bones, a chicken, feathers, and perhaps even human bones. Once she realizes where she is, she goes to run away, but Leatherface opens the door and grabs her before she can escape. He takes her in and puts her on a meat hook as he hacks away at Kirk's corpse. Jerry is making fun of Franklin about the hitchhiker as Franklin is a bit worried, but they keep reassuring him that he won't come back, although it didn't mean anything. After Franklin questions where his knife is, Jerry goes to check on Pam and Kirk. He gets to the house and knocks multiple times but gets no answer. He goes to leave but sees Pam's jacket by the door and decides to go in. He walks through the door that Kirk was killed in and enters a meat room. He sees the meat hook completely empty and he hears some knocking on a freezer. Maybe the most confusing moment in the movie. He opens the freezer and Pam looks dead. She jumps out. He turns around. Leatherface comes in and just cracks him over the head. But Pam is dead. Leatherface puts her body back in and you can see he looks confused. He looks scared. He's freaking out about the people breaking into his house. And in another infamous shot, he just sits there, shocked. It's now dark as Sally and Franklin are waiting for Pam, Kirk and Jerry to return. After calling out for him, Franklin agrees to go with Sally to find them. She pushes him through the woods on what feels like 5 minutes as he keeps saying he can hear something. And he can.
Stop!
As Franklin gets chainsawed to death, the only death in this movie actually involving a chainsaw, bit weird for a movie called The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Sally screams and runs away, and this starts a good 5 minutes of chasing. She runs into Leatherface's home and locks the door, but as she runs upstairs, she finds the apparently dead bodies of 2 elderly people. She runs back downstairs just as Leatherface finishes cutting through the door. She runs back upstairs and takes a shortcut to the floor. They once again run through the woods before Sally gets to the station. She enters and screams about Leatherface, but the cook says he got no phone. He goes to grab the car as Sally realizes that the barbecue they ate earlier looks pretty human. He comes back with the car plus a bag and a rope and tries to tie Sally up. She fights back, but he knocks her out. The cook picks up the hitchhiker who is actually his brother and they take Sally back to the house. And the cook gets angry at Leatherface, who is also his brother, for wrecking the door. They get the granddad, who is Grandad Sawyer, downstairs to suck the blood from Sally's thumb. And as he does a nice little dance. But Sally isn't enjoying it because she passes out. When she comes to, she's tied up and everyone is eating. She immediately starts screaming and begging for them to help her, but they just imitate her to the annoyance of the cook, who tells everyone just get it over with as he can't
take no pleasure in killing.
They decide to let Grandpa do it as he is the best at killing. They place Sally under Grandpa and they try to help him hit her, but he drops the hammer. And a second time, and again, but on the 4th time he drops it. He finally hits her head, but she manages to run away before he can finish the job. She jumps through another window, and it is now daytime as she had been tortured for hours. She runs down the path as the hitchhiker and Leatherface chase her. She gets to the road and a 16-wheeler comes and crushes the hitchhiker to death. The lorry driver stops and helps Sally into it, and they climb out the other side as Leatherface starts attacking the door. Couldn't they just drive away? The lorry driver throws a wrench at Leatherface's head and he just falls over with a chainsaw going into his leg. As the lorry driver goes for a jog, Sally jumps into the back of a pickup truck and it drives away as she celebrates, and Leatherface goes angry as the film ends. So, Tobe Hooper's Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of the greatest horror movies, in my opinion. One of my old channels was even called The Welsh Chainsaw Massacre, as I love this movie. But is it overrated or is it underrated? Well, I have an answer for that. This movie has bad characters, but it's so fun and enjoyable, and one of the few horror movies that actually makes me jump at some of the bits, because it just seems so authentic. I will watch this again, and I will love it again. It is underrated in my opinion, as not many people talk about it as one of the best horror movies as it deserves. One of the first proper horror movies, almost 50 years old. The characters aren't good, but they don't take anything away. Sally is a great final girl, and probably the only good character set, maybe Franklin. Leatherface is iconic, and the movie was released on October 11th, 1974, released before classics such as Jaws, Alien, and Halloween. And if you haven't watched it already, then go ahead and enjoy it, even though I've spoiled the entire movie for you. My name is Jaiden from Codename Anteiku. I'll see you all again very soon.